All right, so AIM 13.4, what are the characteristics of Russian absolutism? We just talked about some responses to the do now, so here we go. All right, I'll give you a second. Okay, so much like we did for Spain, where we kind of had a couple of different regimes, we had Ferdinand and Isabella and then Philip II. When we look at Russian absolutism, we look at two different regimes also. We look at Peter the Great and then Catherine the Great. So we look at both of them as kind of the era of Russian absolutism. So Peter the Great's whole thing is he reigns as czar for about 40 years and change, and when he comes to power, Russia is very much what quote unquote a backward nation. It's not kind of up to speed with the rest of Europe as far as technological advancement and kind of progressive thought. So his objective is to kind of improve Russia by bringing a lot of this stuff up to speed. So he's going to kind of upgrade the military, and his whole thing is he wants Russia to kind of rise up and become a world power that is kind of on the same level as a lot of the other traditional European powers that we've talked about, France, Spain, places like that. So his whole thing is going to be educational reform, and he's also going to take control of the Orthodox Church. So we said that education is a function of society and religion is also a social function also. So Peter the Great exerting control over these aspects of life are what make him an absolute ruler. Okay, Catherine, we'll give you a second. All right, so Catherine the Great is going to kind of follow in the footsteps of Peter the Great, and she is going to continue a lot of the developments and policies that Peter had put into place, namely educational reform being first and foremost. Catherine the Great's whole thing is she's going to model Russia after Western European society. So with regard to Peter the Great and Catherine the Great, a big part of the conversation with them is really about westernization and modernization, right? We use kind of both of those terms interchangeably, but they really mean the same thing. And this is kind of making a conscious effort to bring about modern changes with regard to technology, with regard to social, political, economic systems. We're trying to bring the country up to speed, okay? And that's really what westernization and / modernization are really all about. They use the word westernization because classically it is Western Europe that is kind of at the forefront of a lot of this progressive thinking, this forward thinking, be that, about technology and invention or democratic, educational reforms, the arts, etc. Right? So Western Europe is always at the forefront of this. So we use modernization and westernization the same way. In essence, they really mean the same thing. But when we play word association here, Peter and Catherine the Great, when we see that, we should think westernization, modernization. And these are the important parts, okay? So you can kind of see the further and further away we get from Louis XIV of France, the less and less severe these examples of absolutism become, right? For example, Peter and Catherine the Great especially, will be known as what's called an enlightened despot, meaning that she is an absolute ruler, but she's also willing to infuse like Enlightenment ideals into her governing. Okay, so there is a way to kind of walk the line here for a lot of these rulers where they are still considered kind of absolutist rulers, but also kind of bringing things up to speed, westernizing, modernizing, right? So Word association, Peter and Catherine the Great, equals Westernization, modernization. That's what's important for us to remember.